The night everything tilted. I knew something was wrong the moment my son wouldn't look at me. Not when I walked into the banquet hall. Not when I hugged him. Not even when he introduced me to people I barely recognized, his coworkers, her friends, strangers who smiled too hard and talked too loud. It was later. After the champagne had been poured. After the music softened. After the lights dimmed just enough to feel important. That's when I noticed it. My son Daniel, my only child, stood at the front of the room with his fiancée, Emily, one arm tight around her waist. He smiled for everyone else. He laughed at the jokes. He nodded at the applause. But every time his eyes drifted toward me, he looked away. And that's when a quiet voice inside me whispered, "You're about to hear something you weren't meant to hear like this." The invitation that felt like a victory. The invitation had arrived 2 weeks earlier, thick and cream-colored, with gold lettering and a weight that felt ceremonial in my hands. Daniel and Emily invite you to celebrate their engagement. I must have read it 5 times. For years, I had worried about my relationship with my son. Not because we fought, but because life had slowly pushed us into polite distance. After his father passed away, it was just Daniel and me. I worked 2 jobs to keep us afloat. I missed school events. I missed dinners. I missed moments I could never get back. When Daniel left for college, he didn't look back much. So when the invitation arrived, I took it as a sign. This is your moment to be part of his life again. I bought a new dress, navy blue, modest but elegant. I even had my hair done, something I hadn't done in years. I practiced smiling in the mirror, telling myself not to look nervous, not to look like the outsider I sometimes felt like in my own son's world. I wanted to be proud. I wanted to belong. The engagement party. The venue was upscale. One of those renovated warehouses turned into event spaces. All exposed brick and hanging lights. The kind of place young professionals loved. The kind of place I had never stepped into before. Emily's parents were already there when I arrived. They were warm, polished, effortlessly confident. Her mother, Linda, wore pearls and spoke about the wedding planner they'd already hired. Her father, Charles, shook my hand firmly and asked polite questions about my job, my neighborhood, my health. I answered carefully, aware of every word. Daniel hugged me quickly, like someone late for a meeting. "Mom, you made it," he said. Of course I did, I wanted to say. I always do. Emily looked beautiful, radiant, really. She hugged me longer than Daniel did. "I'm so glad you're here," she said. And for a moment I believed it. The small signs I ignored. Dinner was served. Toasts were made. Stories were shared. People talked about Daniel like he was someone I barely recognized. Confident, ambitious, successful. A man with plans. A man with a future. I smiled and nodded, even though my chest tightened every time someone said, "You raised him so well," because they didn't know how often I wondered if I had failed him. As the night went on, I noticed small things. Emily's parents whispered with Daniel near the bar. Emily squeezed his hand tightly during certain conversations. And once, just once, I caught Linda looking at me with something unreadable in her eyes. Not unkind. Not exactly. Just prepared. The announcement. The music faded. Emily tapped her glass with a spoon, smiling wide. "Can we have everyone's attention for just a moment?" The room quieted. Phones came out. People leaned in. Daniel cleared his throat. My heart beat faster. I assumed it was the wedding date. Or the venue. Or maybe a pregnancy announcement. Something joyful, expected, safe. Daniel smiled. "First," he said, "we want to thank all of you for being here tonight. This means more to us than we can say." Applause. Emily squeezed his arm. Daniel continued. "There's something important we want to share. Something we've been planning for a while." The room hummed with anticipation. I leaned forward slightly in my chair. Then he said it. "Emily and I have decided that after the wedding, we'll be moving out of state." The room erupted in excited chatter. "California," someone guessed. "New York," another shouted. Daniel nodded. "Seattle," he said. Emily's company offered her an incredible opportunity, and I've already accepted a position there as well. More applause. More smiles. Everyone looked thrilled. Everyone except me. The part that took my breath away. I sat there frozen. Seattle, 3,000 miles away. I opened my mouth and closed it. My hands trembled slightly in my lap. Daniel hadn't mentioned this. Not once. I told myself I was being dramatic. He was an adult. He didn't owe me every detail of his life. Then Emily spoke again. "There's more," she said gently. Daniel inhaled slowly. "We've also decided," he said, "that it would be best if we start this next chapter focusing fully on our new life together." The room quieted. He looked at me then. Really looked at me. "And that means keeping things simple. Just us." I felt the words before I understood them. Linda smiled sympathetically. Charles nodded. Emily's voice was soft, practiced. "We think distance will be healthy," she said. "For everyone." The silence around me. I don't remember the applause this time. I don't remember the music restarting. All I remember is the sound of blood rushing in my ears, and the sharp awareness that everyone seemed to understand something I didn't. I felt like I'd stepped into the middle of a conversation that had already ended. I stood up slowly. Daniel flinched. "Mom, I need some air," I said. My voice sounded steady. Too steady. I walked past smiling faces, past the gift table, past the photos of Daniel and Emily laughing in places I'd never been with him. Outside, the night air was cold. I breathed in deeply. Healthy distance. Keeping things simple. Just us. Words that sounded reasonable until you realized who was being removed. A memory I couldn't shake. As I stood there, I remembered Daniel at 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework while I cooked dinner. "Promise you won't ever leave me," he'd said suddenly. I laughed then. "I'm not going anywhere," I told him. Now I wondered if he'd been preparing for this moment longer than I knew. Back inside. When I returned, Daniel was waiting near the doorway. "Mom," he said quietly, "I didn't mean for you to find out like that." "Like what?" I asked. "In front of a room full of strangers?" Emily hovered nearby, concern carefully arranged on her face. "We thought it would be easier," she said. "For who?" I asked. Daniel looked down. That hurt more than any words. The party continued without me. I stayed. I smiled. I congratulated them. But something had shifted. I realized I wasn't just attending an engagement party. I was witnessing a transition. A closing door. And as the night wound down and guests began to leave, I felt a certainty settle deep in my bones. That announcement wasn't the real surprise. The real one was still coming. And when it did, it would change everything I thought I knew about my son, his future, and my place in it. What they decided without me. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on my bed staring at the ceiling fan, watching it circle slowly like it had nowhere else to be. My phone sat on the nightstand beside me, silent. No message from Daniel. No apology. No explanation. Just quiet. The kind of quiet that isn't peaceful. The kind that feels like something has been taken away. I replayed the engagement party over and over in my mind, searching for the moment I should have seen it coming. The sideways glances. The rehearsed smiles. The way Emily's parents spoke with certainty about plans that clearly didn't include me. "We think distance will be healthy." Healthy for who? The morning after. The next morning I woke with a headache and a tightness in my chest that coffee couldn't fix. I sat at my small kitchen table, the same one Daniel had done his homework at years ago, and tried to make sense of what had happened. Daniel wasn't a cruel person. He never had been. So why did it feel like I had just been quietly erased? I told myself to be reasonable. Children grow up. They move away. They build their own families. But this wasn't just distance. This was intentional. And I could feel it. Around 10 in the morning my phone finally buzzed. "Daniel, can we talk later today?" I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Me. Yes. One word. Neutral. Controlled. Inside, my hands were shaking. Coffee carefully chosen. Daniel suggested a coffee shop near his apartment. Neutral territory. Public. Safe. I arrived early. The cafe smelled like roasted beans and cinnamon. Couples sat close together. Laptops glowed on small tables. Life moved forward around me, unaware that mine felt paused. Daniel walked in 5 minutes late. He looked tired. His shoulders were tense like he was bracing for impact. He hugged me, awkward and brief. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I'm your mother," I replied. "Of course I came." He winced slightly. We sat. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The explanation that didn't explain. "I want you to know," Daniel began, staring into his coffee, "that none of this was meant to hurt you. That's usually how people start when they know it will," I said gently. He sighed. "Emily and we've been talking about our future for a long time. About what kind of life we want. About boundaries." There it was. That word. Boundaries from what? I asked. He hesitated. From stress. From pressure. From expectations. I looked at him carefully. "Daniel," I said, "when have I ever pressured you?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "That's not what I mean exactly," he said. "It's just growing up things were hard. You worked a lot. You worried a lot. I felt like I had to be strong all the time." My heart tightened. "I worked so you'd be safe," I said quietly. "I know," he said quickly. "And I appreciate that. I really do. But it left a mark. I learned to handle things on my own." I nodded slowly. "And now," I said, "you don't want me in your life?" "That's not what I said," he snapped, then softened. "I just don't want emotional complications." I almost laughed. Emotional complications. Was that what I was now? Emily's role. "Is this what you want?" I asked. "Or what Emily wants?" He looked up sharply. "That's not fair." "I'm asking," I said calmly, "because this feels coordinated." Daniel rubbed his forehead. "Emily grew up differently," he said. "Her family believes in clean breaks. Independence. Not clinging to the past." The words landed hard. Clinging. Past. "So I'm the past now?" I asked. "No," he said quickly. "You're my mom. But we're building something new." "And where do I fit?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. That silence told me more than words ever could. The thing he almost didn't say. "There's something else," Daniel said finally. My stomach dropped. "Emily and I agreed," he continued slowly, "that for the first few years of our marriage, we want minimal contact with extended family." Minimal contact. I stared at him. "You mean holidays?" I asked. "Yes." "Phone calls?" "Yes." "Visits?" He swallowed. "Occasionally." Planned. Like business meetings." I felt a pressure behind my eyes, but I refused to cry. "And this," I said, "was decided before the engagement party." He nodded. "And you didn't think to tell me?" "We didn't know how," he said. I leaned back in my chair. "No, they knew how. They just chose not to." A memory he didn't remember. "Do you remember," I asked softly, "the night your father died?" Daniel stiffened. "You were 15, I continued. "You sat on the couch all night, pretending not to cry because you thought you had to be strong for me." His jaw tightened. "I remember," he said quietly. "I told you then," I said, "that we would get through life together. That we were a team." He looked away. "And now," I said, "you're telling me I'm an emotional complication." "That's not what I meant," he said, his voice strained. "But that's what you said." Emily's mother calls. As if on cue, Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. "Emily's mom," he said. "Of course." He declined the call, but I noticed how tense he became. "She worries," he said, almost defensively. "About what?" I asked. "About interference," he replied. "Interference." I laughed then, not loudly, not bitterly. Just a small tired sound. "She's never met me," I said. "But she's already afraid of me." "That's not true," he said. "She helped plan an announcement that erased me," I replied. Daniel looked down. The truth beneath the politeness. "I need you to understand something," I said carefully. "I'm not asking to control your life. I'm not asking to live near you. I'm not asking to interfere." "I know," he said. "I'm asking not to be cut off," I continued. Quietly. Publicly. Without a conversation. He nodded slowly. "I should have told you earlier," he admitted. "Yes," I said. "You should have." We sat in silence again. Outside, a couple walked past holding hands, laughing. Life continuing. What he finally admitted. "Emily is afraid," Daniel said quietly. "Of me?" I asked. "Of losing control," he said. "Of being second. Of expectations she doesn't understand." I absorbed that. "And you chose her fear over my presence," I said. He didn't argue. That was answer enough. The line I drew. "I won't beg to be in your life," I said, standing up. "I raised you to be strong, not dependent. That includes me." "Mom," he began. "But," I continued, "I also won't accept being treated like a problem to manage." He stood too. "I don't want to lose you," he said, panic flickering in his eyes. "Then don't," I replied. "But understand this. Distance chosen without honesty breaks things. And not everything broken can be fixed later." His eyes filled slightly. Mine didn't. I had cried enough in private. Driving home. On the drive home, I realized something painful and freeing at the same time. I had spent years worrying about being a burden to my son, and now I understood. They weren't creating boundaries to protect themselves from me. They were creating them because they didn't trust that love could exist without control. And that wasn't my failure. The letter I almost didn't write. That night, I sat down and began to write a letter. Not an angry one. Not a pleading one. An honest one. Because if they were going to define the terms of distance, I would define the terms of dignity. And what I put in that letter would set something in motion. Something no one at that engagement party saw coming. Something that would force the truth into the open. The letter that changed everything. I rewrote the letter 5 times. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because I knew exactly how much power words could hold when spoken at the wrong time in the wrong tone. This letter couldn't sound wounded. It couldn't sound accusing. And it certainly couldn't sound like a mother begging to be loved. So I waited until the house was quiet, until the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock were the only witnesses. Then I sat at the table where Daniel used to eat cereal straight from the box and began again. The letter. "Daniel, I've spent the last few days thinking about our conversation, about what you said and what you didn't. I respect that you are building a life with Emily. I respect your right to choose distance, independence, and privacy. But I need you to understand something clearly. Love does not become interference simply because it exists. I am not asking for control. I am asking for honesty. If the future you are choosing does not include me in meaningful ways, I need to know that directly, not through announcements, not through carefully worded explanations, and not through other people. I will not compete with your wife. I will not shrink myself to make others comfortable. What I offer is simple. Presence without pressure. Love without conditions. If that is something you want in your life, I am here. If it is not, I will step back with dignity. But the choice must be made with truth. Mom." I folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and addressed it by hand. Then I sat there for a long time staring at it, because once I sent it, there would be no pretending anymore. The response I didn't expect. 3 days passed. No call. No text. No reply. I told myself I was prepared for that. Then on the fourth evening my phone rang. It wasn't Daniel. It was Emily. I stared at her name on the screen, surprised by how calm I felt. "Hello," I said. "Hi," she said softly. "This is Emily." "I know," I replied. There was a pause. "I read your letter," she said. My stomach tightened. "And?" I asked. "I think," she said carefully, "we should talk." Emily unfiltered. We met at her parents' house. That alone told me something. Linda greeted me politely but without warmth. Charles nodded and retreated to his study, as if this conversation was a storm he didn't want to stand in. Emily led me to the living room. She didn't offer tea. She didn't sit too close. She folded her hands in her lap and looked at me like someone preparing to explain a complicated decision. "I want to be honest with you," she began. "Please," I said. "That's all I've asked for." She nodded. "I didn't grow up with a close relationship to extended family," she said. "My parents believe in emotional self-sufficiency." "I can see that," I replied. She pressed on. "When Daniel and I started talking seriously about marriage, I was afraid," she admitted. "Not of you as a person, but of what you represent." "And what is that?" I asked. "A bond," she said. "A history. A place I can't enter." That stung. "I lost my father young," she continued. "And my mother always taught me that emotional dependency weakens relationships." I absorbed that quietly. "So you decided," I said, "that distance would protect you." "Yes," she said. "From resentment. From comparisons. From expectations I don't know how to meet." "And you didn't think," I asked gently, "that cutting me out would create resentment of its own?" She looked down. "I thought it would fade," she said. "Over time. Fade. Like I was a phase. The truth comes out." "There's more," Emily said. I waited. "My mother worries," she continued, "that once we're married, Daniel might feel torn. That he might prioritize you emotionally." I almost laughed. "I raised him alone," I said. "Of course we're close." "That's what scares her," Emily replied. "And you?" I asked. Emily hesitated. "Yes," she said quietly. The honesty landed heavy between us. "So this wasn't about me interfering," I said. "It was about you feeling threatened." "I don't want to be second," she said, her voice tight. "You won't be," I replied. "But love isn't a competition." She didn't respond. Linda joins in. Linda appeared in the doorway. "I think we should all talk," she said. Of course she did. She sat across from me, back straight, expression composed. "We want what's best for the marriage," she said. "Early years are fragile." "And I'm a threat to that?" I asked. She smiled thinly. "You're a strong presence," she said. "Some mothers don't know when to step back." I met her gaze. "And some daughters-in-law don't know when to step forward with empathy," I replied. Emily inhaled sharply. Linda's smile faded. The line I would not cross. "I'm not asking to be central," I said. "I'm asking not to be erased." Linda folded her hands. "We believe distance creates clarity," she said. "Distance creates stories," I replied. "And stories without truth turn into misunderstandings." She didn't argue, because she knew it was true. Emily's confession. After a long silence, Emily spoke again. "I didn't expect your letter," she said. "I expected anger, or guilt, or manipulation. And instead," I asked. "You set boundaries," she said, "without attacking us." I nodded. "That scared me," she admitted, "because it means you're not the problem I imagined." Linda looked at her sharply. Emily continued. "I think," she said slowly, "that we made decisions out of fear." My heart softened just a little. Daniel arrives. The front door opened. Daniel stepped in, eyes wide when he saw us all together. "What's going on?" he asked. Emily stood. "I told your mother the truth," she said. He looked at me. I held his gaze. All of it? He asked. She nodded. The choice he couldn't avoid. Daniel sat down heavily. Mom, he said quietly, I didn't realize how much was decided without you. That, I said, is the point. He looked at Emily, at her mother, then back at me. I don't want a life built on fear, he said. Linda stiffened. Emily's eyes filled with tears. I don't want to lose you, she said to him. And you won't, he replied. But I won't sacrifice honesty to keep the peace. I felt something shift. Not victory. Truth. The announcement that wasn't over. As I stood to leave, Emily stopped me. I don't know what this looks like yet, she said. But I don't want to start my marriage by erasing someone important to Daniel. I nodded. That's a beginning, I said. Outside, the air felt lighter. But I knew this wasn't over. Because engagement parties have a way of echoing forward. And there was still one more announcement coming. One that would force everyone to decide what kind of family they were really building. The truth revealed in front of everyone. The wedding shower was Emily's idea. Or at least that's what she said. But when the invitation arrived, lavender cardstock, elegant script, a guest list that looked suspiciously similar to the engagement party, I understood what it really was. A test. A second public moment. A chance to correct or confirm what had been set in motion that night. I considered not going. I really did. But then I remembered something my own mother used to say. If you leave the room, someone else will tell your story for you. So I went. Walking back in. The shower was held at a country club just outside the city. Bright windows. White tablecloths. The soft clink of china and polite laughter. Emily greeted me at the door. This time her hug was real. Not long. Not overly familiar. But sincere. I'm glad you came, she said. So am I replied. Daniel stood nearby, watching us carefully, like a man standing between two shifting plates of earth. Linda was there too. She nodded at me, expression neutral. Progress, I supposed. The atmosphere has changed. Something felt different. Conversations paused when I walked past, but not in the uncomfortable way from before. More like people were curious. I caught snippets. Did you hear? I think they talked things out. Daniel seems calmer lately. I realized then that silence creates rumors, but truth, once spoken, travels faster. Emily stayed close to Daniel. Not possessive. Just present. And Daniel, he didn't avoid my eyes anymore. The gifts and the speeches. After brunch, Emily's aunt stood to give a toast. She talked about love. About partnership. About the importance of family. I noticed Emily glance at me when she said that word. Family. Then Linda stood. I raised Emily to be independent, she said proudly. To know her own mind. To protect her marriage. A familiar message. But then she surprised me. That said, she continued, marriage doesn't happen in isolation. It happens in context. I raised an eyebrow slightly. She went on. And that context includes the people who shaped us. Some heads turned toward me. Linda's eyes flicked to mine just briefly. It wasn't an apology, but it was acknowledgement. Emily takes the floor. Then Emily stood. The room quieted. I wasn't planning to speak, she said, voice a little unsteady. But I think it's important. Daniel reached for her hand. She squeezed it. When Daniel and I announced our engagement, she continued, we also shared plans that were incomplete. The room stilled. My heart began to pound. We spoke about distance, she said. About change. About starting fresh. People nodded. But what we didn't say, she continued, is that some of those decisions were made out of fear. A ripple moved through the room. Emily inhaled. And fear has a way of making us forget that love isn't a limited resource. She turned toward me. I want to say publicly, she said, that I misunderstood what it meant to join a family instead of replacing one. Every eye in the room swung to me. I sat very still. Daniel stood. My mother raised me alone, he said. She sacrificed more than I understood at the time. And while Emily and I are building a life together, that doesn't require erasing where I come from. The silence was thick. Then someone clapped. Then another. And suddenly the room filled with applause. Not the polite kind, but the kind that carries relief. The moment I didn't expect. Emily looked at me again. I hope, she said, voice soft, that we can move forward with honesty. I stood. Not because I planned to, but because something in me knew this moment mattered. I don't need perfection, I said. I need truth. The room was so quiet I could hear someone's bracelet slide down their wrist. I never wanted to be a threat, I continued. I wanted to be family. And family isn't built by control. It's built by trust. Emily nodded. Linda's lips pressed together, but she said nothing. Daniel looked at me like he used to when he was young, like he was finally listening. After the applause, people came up to me afterward. Some hugged me. Some thanked me. Some whispered things like, "That took courage." I smiled, but inside I felt strangely calm. Not victorious. Resolved. Emily's cousin leaned over and said, "You handled that with so much grace." Grace, I thought. Took me a long time to learn it. Private conversation. Later, as the crowd thinned, Emily found me by the window. "I know words aren't enough," she said. "No," I replied. "But they're a start." She hesitated. "My mother will need time," she admitted. "So will I said honestly. She nodded. "But I don't want to begin my marriage believing love has to be defended," she said. That, I thought, was the most important thing she'd said all day. Daniel's promise. Daniel walked me to my car. "I should have protected that conversation sooner," he said. "I was trying to keep everyone happy." "That rarely works," I replied. "I know," he said. "I'm learning." He hesitated. "We're still moving," he said. "But I don't want distance to mean disappearance." I looked at him carefully. "Then stay in touch," I said. "Call. Visit. Let me be part of your life, not as an obligation but as a choice." He nodded. "I choose that," he said. And for the first time in weeks I believed him. But one more truth remained. As I drove home I realized something. Public acknowledgments matter, but private actions matter more. And while something had shifted for the better, there was still one piece of the story unresolved. Because the engagement party announcement had set expectations in motion. And the final test of those expectations would come after the wedding. When real life, not speeches, would decide whether those words meant anything at all. What family really means. The wedding was beautiful. Not the dramatic, over-the-top kind of beautiful, but the kind that feels intentional. Thoughtful. Carefully chosen. Emily wore a simple ivory dress. Daniel cried when he saw her. People noticed. So did I. I sat in the third row. Not the front, but not hidden either. Exactly where I belonged. The ceremony. As they exchanged vows, I watched their faces closely. Not for romance. For truth. When Emily promised partnership instead of control, I felt a quiet relief. When Daniel promised honesty instead of avoidance, I believed him. Because I had learned something over the past few months. Words only matter when they change behavior. The reception. At the reception I was included, naturally. Daniel danced with me, smiling like a boy again. Emily thanked me for coming, not as a courtesy, but with genuine warmth. Linda watched from across the room. She didn't smile. But she didn't interfere either. That was growth. The move. They moved to Seattle 6 weeks later. The distance was real. But so was the effort. Daniel called every Sunday. Not rushed. Not distracted. Just present. Emily sent photos. Texted updates. Included me in plans. Not out of obligation but intention. They invited me to visit. I didn't rush. I waited. Because healthy relationships aren't about proving anything. They're about trust unfolding naturally. The first visit. When I finally went, I stayed in a hotel. My choice. Emily respected it. They picked me up at the airport together. No tension. No rehearsed smiles. Just ease. Over dinner, Emily asked me about my life, really asked. Not polite questions. Curious ones. I answered honestly. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to shrink myself to fit. Linda's call. A month later, my phone rang. It was Linda. I wanted to thank you, she said stiffly. For what? I asked. For not forcing your way into their marriage, she replied. I smiled softly. I didn't step back because I was asked to, I said. I stepped back because I trust my son. She was quiet. That takes strength, she admitted. So does letting go of control, I replied. She didn't argue. What I learned that boundaries are not walls, they're agreements. I learned that love doesn't compete, it expands. And I learned that dignity is not something you demand. It's something you carry, even when others forget to offer it. The final surprise. 6 months later, Daniel called. Mom, he said, voice thick. We have news. I smiled. I'm listening. Emily's voice joined his. We're expecting. I closed my eyes. Not from shock. From gratitude. They weren't afraid to tell me. They wanted me to know. The lesson. Families are not built by fear. They're built by honesty, courage, and the willingness to sit in discomfort long enough to understand each other. That engagement party caught me off guard. But it also forced a truth into the open, one that changed all of us. And in the end, the surprise wasn't the announcement. It was the realization that sometimes, being almost pushed out of someone's life teaches you exactly how to stand in your own.